पृथिवी शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगं शान्तिर्द्यौ शान्तिर्दिशः शान्तिरवान्तर दिशा शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर्वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिश्चन्द्रमा शान्तिर् नक्षत्राणि शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिर्वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्गौ शान्तिरजा शान्तिरश्वः शान्तिः पुरुषः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिर्ब्राह्मणः शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः शान्तिर्मे अस्तु शान्तिः. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now focus our attention to our heart. Although God is present everywhere and everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amrutam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us always. Our subject today is I and mine. This phrase occurs again and again in the conversations of Sri Ramakrishna. Those of you who are familiar with the big book, the Gospel of Ramakrishna, you see that he brings up this phrase quite often. Just to give you a taste of how and in what context this phrase comes up, I'll read to you a few passages from Ramakrishna's conversation to see how this I and mine surfaces. So this is how on page 308, for instance, he says, "The feeling of I and mine has covered the reality. Because of this, we do not see truth. Attainment of Chaitanya, divine consciousness, is not possible without the knowledge of Advaita, non-duality. After realizing Chaitanya, one enjoys Nityananda, eternal bliss. One enjoys this bliss after attaining the state of a Paramahamsa." On another occasion, when Sri Ramakrishna visited one Star Theatre place in Calcutta, he asked Girish Ghosh, he said, "Does this theatre belong to you?" And then Girish says, "It is ours, sir." And then Ramakrishna says, "Ours is good. It is not good to say mine. People say I and mine, they are egoistic, small-minded people. And yet again, I and mine, these constitute ignorance. My house, my wealth, my learning, my possessions. The attitude that prompts one to say such things comes of ignorance. On the contrary, the attitude born of knowledge is, O God, you are the master, and all these things belong to you. House, family, children, attendants, friends are all yours. I and mine, that is ignorance. By discriminating, you will realize that what you call I is really nothing but the Atman. Reason it out. Are you the body or the flesh or something else? At the end, you will know that you are none of these. You are free from attributes. Then you will realize that you have never been the doer of any action, that you have been free from virtue and faults alike, that you are beyond righteousness and unrighteousness. The feeling of thee and thine is the outcome of knowledge. I and mine comes from ignorance." You see this, associating I and mine with ignorance is a recurring theme in Ramakrishna's teachings. Knowledge makes one feel, O God, thou art the doer and I am thy instrument. O God, to thee belongs all, body, mind, house, family, living beings, the universe. All these are thine, nothing belongs to me. An ignorant person says, "Oh, God is there, very far off." The man of knowledge knows that God is right here, very near in the heart, that God has assumed all forms and dwells in all hearts as their inner controller. One devotee asked Ramakrishna, "Is the world unreal?" Ramakrishna replied, "Yes, it is unreal as long as one has not realized God. Through ignorance, we forget God and speak of I and mine. We sink down and down, entangled in Maya, deluded by lust and greed. Maya robs us of our knowledge to such an extent that we cannot find the way of escape, though such a way exists." And then he says another place, during one of Narendra's early visits, Narendra was, as many of you are aware, Vivekananda's pre-monastic name. So, and when as a teenager he visited Ramakrishna, during one of his early visits, I touched his chest and he became unconscious. Regaining consciousness, he wept and said, "Oh, why did you do that to me? I have a father, I have a mother." This I and mine spring from ignorance. A worldly person is in a state of intoxication. He always says to himself, "It is I who am doing everything. All these, the house and family, are mine." Baring his teeth, he says, "What will happen to my wife and children without me? How will they get along? Who will look after my wife and children?" One cannot attain knowledge unless one is free from egoism. There is a saying, "When shall I be free? When I," the I in quotation marks, "when I shall cease to be. I and mine, that is ignorance. Thou and thine, that is knowledge." Okay, here is one more. The feelings of I and mine is ignorance. People say that Rani Rashmani built the Kali temple, but nobody says that it is the work of God. They say that such and such a person established the Brahmo Samaj, but nobody says it was founded through the will of God. This feeling, I am the doer, is ignorance. On the contrary, the idea, "O God, thou art the doer and I am only an instrument. Thou art the operator and I am the machine," is knowledge. After attaining knowledge, a man says, "O God, nothing belongs to me. Neither this house of worship, nor this Kali temple, nor this Brahmo Samaj. These are all thine. Wife, son, husband, family, none of these belong to me. God, they are all yours." To love these objects, regarding them as one's own, is Maya. But to love all things is Daya, compassion. To love only the members of the Brahmo Samaj or of one's own family is Maya. To love one's own countrymen is Maya. But to love the people of all countries, to love the members of all religions is Daya. Such love comes from love of God from Daya. Maya entangles a person and turns him away from God. But through compassion, one realizes God. Sages like Shukadeva and Narada always cherished compassion in their hearts. Okay, so you get an idea of the important role that I and mine play in our life. I think we will not be able to go through a day without uttering these personal pronouns. Try it if you want. Without saying I or mine, it will be impossible. So there's how many times we use these phrases. So it's helpful to reflect on what this I and mine and the role they play in our lives. One of the couplets that Ramakrishna mentions was, "When I will be free, when I will cease to be." When this I, the ego, only when it ceases, only when it disappears, will I become really free. The Buddhist concept of freedom is known as nirvana, is also often seen as a cessation of the self, which manifests as I. Now, in order to know when, how, and why this I or the ego will cease to be, we should begin by examining when, how, and this I came to be. I mean, if we know how it came about, we might be in a better position to know how to get rid of it and why we should get rid of it. So let's reflect a little bit on that. Let's begin with when. So when did this I come? Now, sufficient research has proved beyond doubt that the I sense does not begin at birth. It takes a few weeks before a newborn baby becomes aware of their own individualities. Until then, they have no idea where their body ends and the rest of the world begins. We can only imagine the impact on them when each of them realizes for the first time I'm a person. Well, we were all babies once. I'm sure none of us remembers that moment when we first realized I'm a person. But it's not too difficult to imagine what may have happened at that time. For one thing, we know that the I sense is always accompanied by the not I sense. Now, that is inevitable, because if I am this, then I am not that. I am not that. So clearly, the moment I am able to identify who I am automatically identifying a lot of things which I am not. Similarly, if I am here, then I am not there. So the identification of the I is accompanied by separation of the I from the rest of the world. And so when we use the word world, I think it's possible to say that the world is really everything that is not I. So it's I, and everything that is not me is the rest of the world. Now, the world that we see is filled with both living and non-living. The perceiver of this world, the one who is encountering this world, that is the I. And therefore, the I is always the subject of perception. And everything that we see is the object of our perception. Now, among these objects of perception, we see some as mine and some as not mine. And so the world that we live in, the world that we encounter every day, every moment of our lives, is really a divided world. A world divided between I and not I, and mine and not mine. So when we hear these sentiments like, oh, we are all one, and how the world has become globalization, everything has come together, we must remember that in spite of all this thing coming together, and at some level the sense that we are all in it together, in spite of that, deep down, the world is already divided in our consciousness, sense of I and not I, mine and not mine. Now, the birth of the I is a kind of a mixed blessing. An event which probably, since we don't remember it, we can just kind of at least guess, make a reasonably educated guess. The birth of the I was very probably both an exhilarating experience and also a terrifying experience. Now, to go from being no one to being someone is actually wonderful. It's a very thrilling thing and we know that even in different measures, you get a promotion at your workplace or you get recognition of some sort. It's a very exhilarating experience. You know that, well, you are now someone who is being recognized. And so this growth of I, that I am someone, was definitely a thrilling experience. But this thrill, this joy of being someone, then kind of gets moderated, gets tamped down a little bit by the discovery of the not I. Because we suddenly discover that this not I is much bigger than the I. Because the moment I know I am this, and suddenly I find this entire world is not me. I discover also that this me has some strength, some power, some capacities, some capabilities, some energy, but this not I, the rest of the world, is much bigger than me, is much more powerful, has a lot more energy, and I cannot fight against the world. The worldly forces are just too powerful. We know that, and sometimes if we tend to forget it, we are reminded of it in a very drastic way through big natural forces like a tsunami or the earthquake or a huge storm, and we know how everything then comes to a standstill. We suddenly realize that in spite of our boasted progress and so on, nature in a matter of minutes can level everything down. And we suddenly realize how vulnerable we are, how limited the power of the I is as opposed to the power of the not I. So the result is that this little I is continually being threatened by the not I, the world. And the rest of our lives can be summed up simply by the struggle of the I to survive. Swami Vivekananda described life as a continual struggle of the individual to counteract the forces of nature trying to keep the person down. And we know that many of us, no matter how free and joyful and contented we may feel at different points in life, but somewhere, either at the conscious level or at the unconscious level, there is always this fear that if I'm not careful, there will be forces outside me which will put me down. It could be at various levels. In the olden days, probably it was more at the physical level. When the dinosaurs were roaming around the world, I think there was a real, very physical threat. And it would seem as if the physical threat was much bigger, much more immediate in the olden days. And today, probably not so much, but maybe with terrorism, yes. But really still, it still seems not as much as a threat coming from different levels. Clearly there is a financial threat with the state of the economy. There is the job with the unemployment going up and the jobs dwindling down. So these are threats at that level. There is the emotional threat. Continually the I is being challenged as we go out into the world, in the communities. We could be within our family, within our friends, wherever we go, we are meeting people. We'll find people who agree with us. We find people who disagree with us. We find people who challenge us. And every moment, at the emotional level, at the intellectual level, we are being challenged. And in the face of these external challenges, the struggle of the I to survive, the struggle of the I to affirm its being, that is really what life is all about. And very often, because this I is so limited, so small compared to the not I, we try to make the I bigger. There is I don't remember exactly. The long back there was a movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy or something, and I have a vague memory, so correct me if I'm wrong. Apparently, that if there are certain wild creatures, and if you feel threatened by them, if they see that you are bigger than them, then you can deal with them. And apparently, the instruction given to the little boy was, when you go, that if you see some big wild creature coming, just kind of raise a stick or something, or something to make it appear as if you are larger than the being ahead. And then apparently, at least not all, but some of the animals probably then will retreat. Anyway, so in general we know that the larger in size we become, those who are smaller in size are afraid of those who are larger in size, kind of a very vague generalization. So in some ways, because this I is small, and because the threats are large at various levels, how do we make this I bigger? And one way of making this I bigger is to increase my possessions. So the more things I have as mine, then I feel somehow stronger. And so that's how we see the financial security, for instance. We feel, the more the money that I have, or more the property that I have, then this will give me some security, because it's not just me. These are the things, my possessions then become a wall that would protect me. So it can take the form of at the level of finances, property, even position, social recognition, a larger number of friends that I have. A lot of people now. I mean, one of the popularities of Facebook, uh, it's dwindling a little bit now, but when it started some time ago, was this: how many likes you get or how many friends you have on a Facebook. And most of these people you probably don't even know. But it's still a kind of a feeling like, oh, there are so many friends I have on Facebook. And it's some kind of, however abstract it might seem, however ambiguous it may seem, it just brings some amount of strength, like I'm not alone. There are all these people around me. So that's the role that this mind plays, this I and mine. Now, I've said a lot about I. Now, who is this I? You, all of us here, every one of us here self-identifies as the I. And so the story of I is really the story of every one of us. Now, if I don't know what my I is, what my I really is, then it really means I don't know who I am. It is that simple. What a tragedy to go through life to know so many things. Many of us, we are smart people. We know a lot of things, but knowing a lot of things about a lot of subject would still not be enough in our struggle to survive if I don't know who I am. So to know everything about or a lot about everything and nothing about oneself would be a great tragedy. The I remains a mystery, and the mind that we have is a very fragile support. It's fragile because everything that I see as mine will be left behind when death comes, and no one knows when that is going to be. So all of the supports that we see as mine, none of them are going to survive death. The situation really, if you look at it this way, is pretty bleak. So how was this I born? We know that, well, it didn't at the physical level, it appears a few weeks after we were born. But when did this I really come about? And in Vedanta, they are very frank about it, and the answer is, it's a very honest answer, I don't know. When did this I really begin? I don't know. Now, when you say I don't know, we're really saying, and I'm ignorant of the fact, ignorant of when this whole thing started. Now, ignorance is really what complicates matters. Now, because of my ignorance, not only do I not know when this I came to be, but I'm not even sure whether this I really came about, whether this I is real or it's only imaginary. Now, why would I say it's imaginary? What if this I is simply an imagination? Is it possible for the I to be an imagination? Think about it this way. Say last night when you slept, and in your dream you went to Hawaii. So sleep last night, in my dream I go to Hawaii. And then of course I wake up in the morning and I'm fine, I'm still in my bed. Now, this I who went to Hawaii last night, what happened to that I? Was it real? When did that I begin? When did the I who visited Hawaii last night begin? And we'll say, well, it began when I slept, really, because before I slept, the I was lying in bed. After I slept and the dream began, the I was in Hawaii. When I woke up, that Hawaii I seems to have just disappeared, God knows where, and this I, waking I, suddenly found itself in the bed again. So what is the status of that I which went to Hawaii last night? Was it real or not real? And if I'm not sure of what that status of that I was, then if I go to Hawaii now today, what is the status of this I which goes to Hawaii today? Why should this I which goes to Hawaii today be more real than the I which went last night? It is like saying, let's say compare a king and a homeless person, or a millionaire and a homeless person. The kings are now pretty much outdated. So a millionaire and a homeless person. So what a millionaire who dreams that I'm homeless and a homeless person who dreams I'm a millionaire, is there any intrinsic difference between the two? Because when they dream, their I, so this person's I is a millionaire who may not be a millionaire when he wakes up, and this person is a homeless who may not be homeless when he wakes up. But again, we somehow tend to feel that when the I of the waking is more real than the I of the dream. The I of the dream is, and this is a big subject, and many of you who have been coming for the study group meetings, we are aware, we have dealt with it quite often, is that we dismiss the I of the dream as not real because that I vanishes when we wake up, doesn't persist. But if we want to think about it logically, the I of the waking, which somehow seems more real than the I of the dream, vanishes also. So when this I vanishes when I sleep, that I vanishes when I wake up. So there is no real difference between the two. Neither of these two I's persist. So the only identity that really persists, whether we are awake, dreaming, or in deep sleep, is the I, which is the real I. So what has been seen when I spoke about deep sleep is that in the state of deep sleep, we have a sense of I when we are awake, we have a sense of I when we are dreaming, and that's how we are able to do a lot of things in our dreams. But there is also a third state that every one of us passes through every night, and that's the state of deep sleep when we don't even dream. And actually, it is only this state of deep sleep which gives us rest. So simply lying in bed and falling asleep may not itself be a very restful experience. There are sometimes people who sleep for 9 hours, 10 hours, and wake up in the morning and still are exhausted. They don't feel refreshed. The reason is, if most of our sleep is just filled with dreams, then physically, yes, we haven't moved, so there is a little amount of rest, but the mind throughout the dream is still jumping all the time. And so it's not how many hours we have slept that would determine the strength of not the strength, but the extent of rest that we have got. But it's actually how much time among those hours was I really in the state of deep sleep? How long in that state was I not even dreaming? Now, in the state of deep sleep, in Sanskrit it's called sushupti. In that state of deep sleep, the I is completely absent. There is no I. There is no going to Hawaii, no going anywhere. There is nothing there. And because the I is absent, the not I is absent also. So you don't experience the world, you don't experience the I. Now, but do you exist or not in that state? And the answer is yes, I exist, because when I wake up in the morning and I say to myself, oh, I had such a great sleep. I didn't know anything. I didn't know, and you wake up and find, oh, 10 hours are over. I had such a deep sleep, I didn't know anything. And I feel so rested. I feel so happy. So there was someone in that state of deep sleep who didn't know anything. There was someone who feels completely rested, who feels completely happy. So from our own daily experience, we know that when this I is absent, we are both happy and free from our care. We might have anxieties and stress in our day-to-day life. Some of the dreams can be nightmares, but the state of deep sleep is always a very free experience of freedom and experience of joy. There is no anxiety, no problem of any kind. The moment we wake up, all the problems come. So problems, to put it, think about it this way. Yeah. Every one of us may have our own list of problems, and that's just the way things are. But we will see that all of our problems are either connected with our body or our mind. So they are either physical, mental, emotional, intellectual, moral. So they are connected with the body and mind, all the problems. And what happens in deep sleep is, because the I is absent, the sense of possession that I am this body, I am this mind, they are absent. So the problem itself hasn't gone, but my attachment to the body and mind are absent, and that's what makes the problem disappear. But when I wake up in the morning, my identification of the body and me as me comes again, and the problems associated with it appear again. So here is just one thing. I think it's very difficult to deny. It would be very, because it's something that we all experience, that when the I is absent, all of my problems cease. Everything that I seek in life, peace, freedom, joy, everything is present there. The only problem there is that we are not able to control our deep sleep. It just happens. And probably you might, if you believe in karma, you might say, well, that's just a good karma that I had some good deep sleep. But it's not something you can go into using your willpower and come out using your willpower. So it's, and devotees might say that just God's grace that I slept well. Now, is it possible that consciously I can loosen the hold of I upon myself? Although in our present experience, it's in a state of deep sleep that we really have good rest, not in dream, not in waking, but there is one other state in which we have even more rest than in deep sleep. And that is when we are in a state of deep meditation or in deep prayer. So those who practice spiritual disciplines regularly, either in the form of prayer or worship or meditation, that can give us even deeper rest, even more profound rest, because through these spiritual disciplines, there is a loosening of the hold of I upon ourselves. So when you begin to pray, when you begin to meditate, in the beginning, for a few minutes, there will be this awareness, oh, I am praying. So there is the I is still there, or I am meditating, or I am doing worship. But, and that's fine, that's how it's supposed to be. But as our concentration deepens in any of these practices, we will see that gradually that I am meditating, this I disappears, or I am worshipping, the I disappears, or I am praying, the I disappears. What remains in the field of our consciousness is just the object of our prayer, the one we are praying to, the one we are worshipping, or the one we are meditating on. Only that remains. So it's only one entity that remains. And when that happens, we see that meditation, prayer, worship, all of these things bring a deep amount of peace, contentment, and a loosening of the I upon us. And the more the I, our ego, is able to, is kind of let me put it this way. The other day I was speaking with some friends, and we were saying that when is it possible to assess oneself clearly, to judge oneself clearly? Because throughout the day, we are constantly making judgments about the people we see, the people we know, the places we have gone to. And oftentimes although our judgments are almost always colored by our own biases and prejudices which have been built up through our past experiences, but still, very often we are better at judging others than judging ourselves. And that is because in order to judge oneself correctly, we need to kind of metaphorically come out of ourselves and see ourselves as someone else. Only then can we judge ourselves properly. And coming out of ourselves is not so easy for a very egoistic person, because this I is so like a glue stuck to this that you just can't loosen it. That's the difficulty. And then we find then kind of misjudgments. So people who want to, who recognize that humility or modesty is a great virtue, then will try to underestimate themselves. And a lot of people overestimate themselves. And that's all. Then we have all this inferiority complex and superiority complex. And one story that I often like to, every time this topic comes up, I feel like mentioning it, is that there was this one person who went to his therapist, and they had a test run over him to find whether he's suffering from inferiority complex. And when the results came, the therapist said, "I have a good news for you. You are not suffering from inferiority complex. You are inferior." So we need, in order for us to get a correct assessment, a little bit of a loosening of the ego is important. And as I said, this is accomplished relatively easily for those who have developed, who have some spiritual ideal in life, who have developed some kind of love for God, or devotion for God through bhakti. And the words of Ramakrishna that I quoted in the beginning, he says how often that the more I say that none of these things belong to me, they all belong to God. They came through God's grace, and I can try to make best use of everything that has been given to me out of love for God. And this is the way then this mine, I and mine can be we can loosen the hold of those things upon us. And then of course those who follow the path of knowledge, ajnana, would try to identify themselves with the Atman, the spirit, recognizing that the spirit is different from the body and mind. Either way. So all the identities that we have, and we don't just have one identity, we have many self-identities. It's like this. I mean, if someone were to ask you, who are you? There is any number of ways you can answer that question. Most of us would just begin by saying what your name is. But depending on the context, if someone were to ask you, who are you, say at the ball game at Fenway, and you better say you're a Sox fan, but I mean, that's the way. So who are you? Then you wouldn't say, simply giving a name won't work. So in the context, you would say, which team are you supporting? Or when the election campaigning is going on, who are you? Then you would say what your political affiliations are. So there are any number of ways people might answer the question, who are you? So we simultaneously, a person can be a father, a son, a mother, a daughter. We know all these, even in terms of relationships. Simultaneously, the same person can be a father and son, a father to someone and son to someone else, a husband, a wife. So all these things are simultaneously, we have these different identities. And so when we sift through these different identities that we simultaneously carry, we then at some point have to ask, which among these identities is my real identity?
Are all these identities just shifting? Because some of these identities remain all through life. Some of these identities change. Your identity as a child will change when you become a teenager. That identity will change when you become a youth. So the identities related to age will change with age. The identities related to nationality will change with your nationality. The identity related to your interests will change with your interests. So many of these identities keep on changing. Even our identity as a human being, even your identity associated with your family, because even that identity is limited to the time from between when you were born and until you die. Because were you a human being before you were born? Again, you'll have to just ask that question to yourself. What identity will you have after you die? So even our human identity then, seen from that larger perspective, seems very limited. So when we keep on questioning these things, that what is the essence of my being, even when this body did not exist before, that is before I was born? What is the essence of my being when this body will cease to exist or will not functional, which is really, in the ultimate sense, means death. So if I will continue to live after death, and most religions show that, the post-mortem existence in theological terms could be in heaven, hell, somewhere. So there are these different ways of expressing it. But what will be my identity then? So these are the ways for those who see themselves as seekers of truth or as spiritual seekers. These are the kind of questions we need to grapple with. That what is my real I? And what Vedanta points out is that when I know my real I, then all these problems will disappear. And that is what Ramakrishna said. When will I be free? When this I will cease to be. And so in very different ways, the different spiritual practices of different traditions at different points in history, all of these show a way to remove these limited identities that have grown around us and kind of break through these walls of limitations and become free. So whichever of these methods, and we are lucky that there is not just one method of doing it, then that would have been terrible. But there are many different ways of doing it. And so we are free to explore all these different ways of breaking through our limitations, and whichever way resonates with our head and heart, whichever way seems to make the best sense, that is what we should go and try to practice. Because ultimately, what is going to free us is not simply what we believe in, or how many books I have read, or how many lectures I have attended. Ultimately, what will free us is what I have done in order to break through these limitations. And because some damage is already done according to Vedanta, but damage in a sense, we are already ignorant of who we are. Until I get a knowledge who I am, I'm just going to wallow in this ignorance. And that's what we don't want to do. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. Next Sunday, our subject will be the purpose of a retreat. On Wednesday, we will continue with the study group, the study of the Gita at 7:30. And on Tuesday and Saturday evening, our Arati and meditation will be as usual at 6 o'clock. So you are welcome for these programs. We'll conclude with a prayer now on page 3 of your book.
May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.